It's a well-known fact that first dates can be awkward, but throw in being coerced to kill your date to save your son. That would make for an interesting thriller, right? Right?
So, how's this date going?
Drop is about a widowed mother who goes to an upscale restaurant to meet a charming date. However, her evening soon turns into a living nightmare when she receives airdrop messages from a mysterious figure who threatens to kill her young son and sister unless she kills her date. Drop is directed by Christopher Landon, who has been involved in a lot of movies that I do particularly like. Happy Death Day to You, the Paranormal Activity movies, Freaky, and one of the new movies from this year, Hard Eyes. And before jumping right in, I must admit that I did not have high expectations for this movie. I don't know what it was. Something about it just felt like it was going to frustrate me. And what do you know? It was full of things that frustrated me. But let's talk about some positives first and foremost that I have for this one. First things first, right off the bat, adorable kid. Her child, her son, is really cute, and he brought a little bit of joy to the movie. While he's only in the movie for a short bit, he stood out to me every time, and every time I saw him, I was like, oh my goodness, he is so cute. His little glasses, his little facial expressions, he kind of reminded me of Meghan Trainor's kid, if you know what I'm talking about. So he was a little bit of joy in this movie that I did enjoy. Another highlight is some of the acting here. While our main character, Violett, frustrated me throughout this movie, I do think that the actress Meghann Fahy did deliver a pretty solid performance. I thought she did a good job of conveying the many emotions and the feelings that her character undergoes throughout the film. She's super neurotic, but she's also trying as hard as possible to continue on her date like nothing is wrong, and given all of the distractions and the many things going on throughout her head, I felt like she conveyed that sporadicness to the audience through her acting, so well done to her. Unfortunately, that's kind of all the positives I have for this movie. Well, okay, I'll also give it the concept. I think the concept was a little bit intriguing. That is, a woman has to kill her date in order to save her child. That's a heavy dilemma, and it does at least have some potential. But with the addition of the text and the airdrops, it just feels so overdone to me. Like that basic concept of receiving ominous text from an unknown source telling you to do something sinister is just something we've seen time and time again. So that being said, let's jump into some more negatives that I have for the movie Drop. Drop introduces us to our main character, Violett, through a flashback which shows the audience that she was in a very abusive relationship. It shows her husband beating her, turning the gun on her, then turning a gun on her son, and then turning a gun on himself and saying something along the lines of, I'm going to take everything away from you. So right off the bat, I feel like we got absolutely no context here, and by dropping us into this super intense moment in order to develop our lead, I thought it was actually really abrupt, and I wanted to more so understand what was going on, what the lead up to this was. So needless to say, I was not immediately hooked into this movie. We then pretty much jump right into the date that Violett is going on, and something that bugged me about this extravagant restaurant setting and the atmosphere of it was that many things felt out of place, which had the effect of taking me out of the movie at times. For example, the waiter. They get this waiter who is working his first shift, and he's kind of wildly unprofessional, goofy, and comes across really inexperienced. And while I think he was supposed to be funny, he felt really out of place, and the whole time I kept thinking to myself, no shot a fancy restaurant like this would hire a waiter like that. And don't get me wrong, he was funny in some moments, but he didn't match the vibe, and his character kind of took me out of the elegant setting that we were given. But then we meet Violett's date Henry, and I might have to knock this rating down a whole half point just for his god-awful outfit. Because on one hand, we have Violett showing up to the date looking like a goddamn queen, long red dress fit for the occasion, and this man shows up with like a wife beater on, a button-up shirt halfway buttoned up, looking a little raggedy. I was just not digging it, and it's another very small aspect that feels a bit out of place, especially since he was the one who made the reservation and showed up just kind of not fit for the occasion in my eyes. But then we get more and more into the date, and as we probably all know, first dates are awkward, and it can be awkward being a fly on the wall watching this first date unravel, which is what we're doing in this movie. So that was expected. That's a bit normal for it to be a little bit cringe, right? But the cringe meter was pretty high in this movie for me. A little too high for my liking in the dialogue. So I don't think the script was all that great, if I'm being honest. And the weird thing was that despite the main character being in this awful situation and getting these texts about her child child's life in jeopardy, I found myself not really on her side. For example, she lies about losing her watch and she asks her date to look for it and they both can't find it, but later in the movie, when she gets up, she knocks over her purse, exposing the watch safe and sound in her purse. Henry sees it, and so he knows that she is lying to him. I felt myself rooting for Henry in these situations in the sense of like, yes, call her out on her lies, and I don't think I should have been feeling that way, because even given her situation, she still for some reason pissed me off with how erratic and how rude she was acting throughout this, and I wanted her to get caught and called out in her lies, and I doubt that's how the writers intended us to feel, and the acting wasn't lacking either, so it just seems like a major script flaw or something. Maybe it's just that they made Henry so likable that you really do feel bad for him with how rude his date is acting towards him, but definitely it's also just I wasn't super invested in our protagonist throughout the whole movie. Another negative is the predictability of this movie and the unrealistic parts. For me, the big reveal of who is behind the texts and the harassment is pretty predictable. And the disappointing thing was that during the time she's receiving these texts, the people behind it feel like professionals. They feel like they know what they're doing. But then the perpetrator makes such a rookie mistake. It feels like a rookie mistake, and I might add cliche mistake of calling Violett by her name when she's certain she's never told them her name. And then they just completely unravel and lay out their whole plan and what's going to happen next and how they're going to cover this and blah, 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 blah. And it just feels so unexciting because we have this kind of like build up, obviously, with a movie like this of a whodunit moment. And then when we figure it out, they just kind of reveal all their cards. And what at first seemed like a professional ploy starts to feel like amateur hour. But some of the biggest sins are what happens after we find out who the main antagonist is, because how Violett ends up getting out of this situation is yet again predictable, and she makes things worse. The next part I'm going to get into is a little bit of spoilers. I'll have timestamps in the description below if you want to skip it, but if not, here we go. So there's a part where Violett is supposed to kill her date by pouring poison in his tequila shot. However, she ends up putting it in the antagonist's food instead, and it's the most predictable thing ever, and it could have been the end of things. But she fumbles so hard by telling him that she poisoned his food before he dies so he has time to kill her sister and son. What she should have done is poisoned it, kept quiet, somehow grabbed his phone or got it away from him so that he couldn't call anybody or communicate with the intruder to kill her family. And then she could have set the cops to her house. Instead, she's so goddamn prideful that she has to admit to him that she's playing Yahtzee, and they try to make it this like badass moment. It doesn't come across that way. But by telling him that straight to his face, obviously, he freaks out, he shoots her date, he stabs the bartender, which was unfortunate because the bartender was one of the better characters too. She was so kind. And then he shoots the window, blowing everybody out, almost blowing her out of the window to her death. And it just could have been so much easier. And he's also in this moment able to get upset and just grab his phone and tell him to kill her sister and son, which is the one thing we do not want to happen. So it was like by her telling him all of this, by her saying, "Oh, got you," it made everything worse. And so that was kind of the part where I was like already frustrated with Violett, but I'm like, Violett, you're all so dumb. But then we get some pretty unrealistic moments that were even more frustrating. In a normal case, when a bullet strikes a window, it would cause it to shatter into small pieces, creating a strong draft, but probably not enough to throw people out of the window. Our antagonist gets yeeted out the window with such tenacity, and Violett does too, but she manages to hang on to a curtain stuck on an outlet, holding her entire weight. When I say stuck on an outlet, I literally mean like an outlet just like right off the floor, right there, and then the curtain stuck on top of it, and that's holding her whole weight out this whole window, wind blowing, everything. Okay, whatever, sure. But it even gets better because her date is then able to pull her up by this small curtain without having any trouble at all, with a gunshot straight in the stomach. Okay, Hulk, do your thing, I guess, core strength, motherfucker. I'm like, what? Okay, but I'm not even done with the atrocities just yet. Remember how I said the man called the intruder and ordered him to kill Violett's sister and son? Yeah, so gunshot, knife stab, pulling Violett up from the edge later. Violett is able to go through that whole fight, go down God knows how many flights, find her car, drive all the way home, and what do you know? The intruder has somehow not managed to kill the sister and the son just yet. Like, man, you had probably a half an hour, if not more. It's like, okay, it's just not believable in this situation if they're serious or they're professionals, but okay, whatever. We then see the old cliche of the sister and the son running up the stairs when the door is right there. Don't run up the stairs. Be better. And then when Violett finally gets home, the scene, the kind of final conflict scene is like a deja vu of the scene with her ex-husband when he was abusing her. And when he's about to like get to her and has the high ground, he takes off his mask and she looks shocked. And we just look at the intruder and I'm like, what the fuck? Do we know who this guy is? Like, it's like, are we supposed to know what this is? Are we supposed to know who this guy is? That tells you something about the character development here, or lack of, rather. I was shocked. Like, the mask was like, are we supposed to be shocked? I don't know who the this man is. So, okay. And then finally, you know, he has the high ground, whatever. But then the son has this like toy truck or toy car, and the intruder had lost his gun at some point during the fight, and the son ends up delivering the intruder's gun in the toy car to his mom, who's sitting there kind of helpless. And we're supposed to believe that the intruder just like doesn't notice the toy truck coming with the gun slowly to the mom to kill him. Like, he didn't see that. Anyway, dumb as f. Every character is a little dumb as f. But the kid did come in clutch, and he's one of the positives because he's so goddamn cute. So, and then just as a final cherry on top, because, you know, that's what makes a good Sunday, both the date and the sister get shot in the stomach, I believe, and end up being just, you know, fine, all hunky-dory. Even though the mortality from an abdominal gunshot wound is very high, I think the survival rate is like 25%, but whatever, everybody's okay, everything works out as expected, I guess. Very unrealistic. Not what would happen in that situation, I don't think. But all right, I will take it easy. Overall, guys, ugh, Drop felt so unrealistic in moments, convenient and underdeveloped. I wasn't particularly interested in or rooting for the protagonist, if I'm being honest. I like the son because he's a cutie. I like the date because he's also a cutie, but he's also just a cool guy. And I like the bartender. That's about it. Everything plays out kind of exactly how you would expect it to. I don't think the movie does anything unique or worthwhile here. I felt like the script was weak in moments, and the atmosphere and the mood of the upscale restaurant was ruined by things that didn't seem to fit. I didn't fully feel immersed in the movie and was disappointed. I'll give it 1 point for Meghann Fahy's performance. I'll give it 1/4 of a point for the adorable kid. I'll give it 1/4 of a point for the adorable date. And I'll give it 1/4 of a point for the cool bartender. That makes it a 1.75 out of 5 star from Lynn Czar. It wasn't great. I just felt like I didn't particularly get anything out of this movie. I will never watch it again. I struggled even to find things that I did enjoy. But let's see what the general consensus is. Yeah, I don't believe that for a second. I don't believe that for a second. 129 ratings, 3.7 average score. Come on. No. No. Guys, I'm telling you here, I wouldn't believe this. But if you want to deep dive into that more, go ahead and read some of these. These are just an average audience rating. Oh my god, 84 Rotten Tomatoes. What is going on here? I can't believe that. Here's what I think is happening here. The reason why the average audience score is high-ish, is because 1, there's not that many ratings there to go off of, and 2, I don't think this movie was overly advertised. I don't know if too many people knew about it, so I don't think it has a very good pool of people putting in their own ratings, but a 1.75 out of 5 I feel like is actually pretty fair for this, but I know some of you guys will disagree. But I will say, I recommend skipping this year. I think that if you like the concept and it sounds interesting to you, give it a go, but just know just don't go in and expecting it to be anything unique. It's exactly what you would expect it to be given the description of the movie, in my opinion. You know, like I said, first dates can be awkward. After all, I will not be going on a second one. But what do you guys think? What do you guys think of Drop? Have you seen the movie? Are you gonna see it? What are your thoughts? Do you agree? Do you disagree? I'd love to know what you guys think. Let me know, and thank you guys for watching, and catch me next time. Peace.